I've seen a lot of folks jump on the cheap side of flail mowers, thinking they're saving money, only to end up with a unit that clogs, drags the tractor, or leaves a patchy cut that makes the whole field look unkempt. That kind of buyer's regret is what makes me pause before I click Add to Cart on anything that promises a wide cut for a low price. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The question with the Visrac 53-inch PTO Flail Mower is whether the extra cost over a generic model actually translates into a smoother day in the orchard or pasture, or if you're still paying for a lot of marketing hype. When I started digging, the first thing that stood out was the belt drive system. Most budget flail mowers still use a gear drive, which can be noisy and, more importantly, tends to waste a chunk of the tractor's horsepower on the gears themselves. A belt drive, especially one that's advertised as premium, typically runs cooler and lets more of the engine's power get to the blades. In practice, that means you'll see the mower maintaining its speed even when you hit a thick stand of brush or a patch of wet grass. I imagined a scenario where I'm pulling the mower through an apple orchard in early spring. The trees still bare, but the ground littered with leaves, twigs, and the occasional rogue branch. The belt drive should keep the rotation steady enough that the blades can slice through without stalling or slipping, which is exactly the kind of reliability you need when you're trying to finish a job before the rain comes in. The blade design itself is worth a second look. The mower comes with 24 sets of precision blades. That's 48 individual cutting points, arranged to give a consistent, fine mulch. Unlike the straight cut or rotary blade setups you see on cheaper units, blades tend to grind material into a more uniform mulch rather than tossing large clumps around. For an orchard owner, that's a real benefit because the mulched material can stay on the ground as a natural fertilizer without having to be collected later. I pictured using it after a harvest when you have a lot of fallen fruit and leaves that need to be broken down quickly. The blade should shred those pieces efficiently, reducing the need for a separate mulching pass. Compatibility is another practical point that often trips buyers up. This model advertises a matched PTO drive shaft that promises a quick, hassle-free install on any tractor with a 2030 HP engine and a standard 3-point hitch. In my own experience, the time you spend fiddling with adapters and custom shafts can eat into the day's work. The fact that Visrac includes the appropriate shaft out of the box means you can bolt the mower onto the tractor, drop the hitch, and be ready to go within minutes. That's a real time saver for anyone who isn't a full-time mechanic. Now, who should actually consider buying this mower? If you're a small to medium orchardist, a livestock producer with a few pastures to keep tidy, or even a municipal worker responsible for maintaining parkland where you need a clean, fine mulch, the 53-inch width hits a sweet spot. It's wide enough to cover a decent swath in a single pass, cutting down the number of turns you have to make, but it isn't so massive that you need a massive tractor to pull it. The fact that it's built for 2030 HP engines means it works with a lot of the tractors you probably already own, so you're not forced to invest in a new power unit just to get a decent mower. On the flip side, if your primary mowing job is a simple, low-grass lawn or a small residential yard, you're probably over-engineering the solution. A 53-inch flail mower can feel bulky, and the blade system, while great for heavy brush, might be overkill for just a few inches of grass. Also, if you only have a tractor on the lower end of that horsepower range, you might notice a slight dip in performance when the mower is fully loaded with dense material. The belt drive does mitigate a lot of that loss, but you'll still feel the strain if you try to push it through a particularly thick stand of weeds without first trimming the heaviest bits. Practical strengths are easiest to see when you think about the day-to-day workflow. The wide cut reduces the number of passes, which saves fuel and labor. The blade arrangement produces a mulch that's small enough to settle quickly, helping with soil health without creating a mess that needs to be raked up later. The belt drive keeps noise down, a noticeable perk if you're working early in the morning near a residential area. And the re-added Toinstall PTO shaft eliminates a common headache that many other flail mowers present. Weaknesses, however, are subtle but worth mentioning. First, the belt system, while smoother, does require periodic tension checks and occasional belt replacement if you're using it heavily. That maintenance isn't a deal breaker, but it's an extra step you won't have with